Welcome back to Buford Pusser, the other story. Now, as you'll recall, last week, Dennis Hathcock and I talked about a number of people who could have provided Buford with some cover after Pauline's homicide. This week, we're going to take a look at one other person, and it's an individual that a lot of people don't know a whole lot about. Governor Ray Blanton. Joining me now is Dennis Hathcock. Dennis, how are you?
I'm doing good today. How are you doing, Mike?
Bodacious. It's Wednesday, so I'm throwing the $5 words around.
Right.
This past episode, you and I talked about the cover-up, people trying to help Buford out from being exposed for a lot of the things he did. And so, of course, today we're getting around to the more serious aspect of it, and that being Governor Ray Blanton. And there's a lot to be said there. You know, he was involved in a lot of scandals, everything from selling surplus cars, which may or may not have been actual surplus cars. There was a lot of them that got sold. A lot of the legislature thought that anything that wasn't tied down, Blanton was selling. Do you recall anything about that when?
Oh yeah, I remember it well. Remember it well. Matter of fact, I went up there and got some of them that they sold. What the deal was they were supposed to be, like they had an auction on such and such date. You came up there, you bid on it. But the guy that they had over surplus disposal decided to do it a different way. And he would just call dealers that he knew and tell them they had like 25 highway patrol cars that they were selling. Tell the miles on them. What would you give for all 25 of them?
Huh. You know, I also know that it was suggested that the administration was selling a lot of those cars to their political allies. So I guess.
Oh, right. I mean, they all went. That's what I'm saying. They would call, say, like if I had been a big Ray Blanton supporter during the election and I gave a lot of money for his campaign, then that was what I got in return. They called me to come bid on the cars and buy the cars where I didn't have to bid against a bunch of people. It was just X number of dollars for the 50 cars. Or
still yet, the administrator of that program got in some legal trouble over it. And I guess had to step down. I don't know if he was punished in any way or not, but
yeah, he got some punishment.
So there is that. Then I also understand that the administration was going out of their way to sell liquor licenses and even real estate license.
Right.
You know,
so I think his brother Jake was taking care of the liquor license, and his uncle, I believe that's who it was that was taking care of the real estate license. Anything that you needed to buy, you could buy. I'll put it that way.
Well, that's what the legislature agreed with. But, you know, I think out of everything that he got involved in, the most serious was the sale of pardons, commutations, because there was a lot of money that went through the governor's office like that. And all of those required his signature. Now, he would claim that he didn't know what all was going on, but yet each one of those required his signature. So it's kind of hard to imagine that he wasn't aware that all this was taking place.
Right.
Especially when you consider that he had more than 650 commutations during his administration, and most of the others ran in anywhere from the 20s to the 40s. And so he
Right.
outdid them all.
Well, I don't know if you've know what they had a song about it. Pardon me, Ray.
Pardon me, Ray. Yeah.
Pardon me, Ray. Are you the cat that signs the pardons? Since you're an old friend of mine, just put your name on the line.
Put it on the line.
Double murder and rape, that's all the jury put me in for. And I'm sure you'll agree, they took advantage of me. Take $100,000.
All the radio stations around Nashville played it. I don't know how many times a day.
Huh.
And, it was. They had a heyday with it. I'll put it that way.
I'm sure they did. There was a lot there to have a heyday with.
Right.
So, the thing that gets you is that I guess when they did some research on it, they found out that depending upon the crime, and most of them were fairly serious. I mean, you had a lot of murderers, serious crimes, rapists, everything else that he was commuting their sentences. And about the lowest I guess I've seen was $2,000, and then it went on up to tens of thousands of dollars. And depending on who you were, what you were charged with.
Well, I know that if you was just the average person, it was about $10,000. But if they thought that you came from a family that had plenty of money, it got on up there to 40 and 50,000. So,
well, the majority of this seemed to be handled by his assistant. I think his name was Eddie Sisk.
Eddie's right.
And
Eddie
he was the one that would, I guess, get all the offers and make the decisions on who would be able to participate. And it all boiled down to, if you had money, you could get out. If you didn't have money, you couldn't get out. And I'm not sure I'm pronouncing her name right. Marie Raganati, I believe.
I think that's right.
She was the whistleblower that finally got tired of all this going on. She was the head of the parole board, and when she saw what they were doing, she reported it. And of course, the FBI got involved. They were checking into all of this, and it was just ridiculous. Of course, they made a movie about it with Sissy Spacek called Marie, and it was really interesting what Blanton was doing. But Ray Blanton, another concern was that when he campaigned for governor, he said that his family construction business wouldn't be allowed to do any work for the state. But then they found where, there was a park that they were involved in. So no telling what else, but, there was some money going back to the family through the governor's office. But the part that got me was the way that they got rid of Ray. Lamar Alexander had won the election as governor, and Blanton, in the last couple of days right before he was to leave office, he sold a lot of more commutations, signed the paperwork, all this. And then they found out he had another stack on his desk to be done. And so they checked it out, and they were wondering how that they could prevent all this. Now, at the time, they thought that James Earl Ray was going to be one of those. Blanton's bodyguard, who was a 15-year veteran with the Highway Patrol, they contacted him and asked, well, we've got a really high value person here that we are trying to get out of prison. How much would it cost? he said, well, I don't know if the governor would be good with this, but he said, I think it'd be at least $75,000.
Right.
And it turned out that it wasn't James Earl Ray, but
Right.
another individual that had been convicted of murders. Kind of weird and wild. But at any rate, what happened was that a bunch of the legislative leaders, knowing that Blanton was going to sign off on a lot more people 3 days before he left office, they managed to get Lamar Alexander sworn in early, and therefore Blanton lost his power and authority to make these commutations, which could not be reversed.
Right.
Amazingly, I don't think Blanton got in any deep trouble over this. I know it caused him a lot of bad publicity and all about how that all this could be going on and him not being aware of it. But a little bit later, the federal government got him for mail fraud and several other violations, and he went to prison over that. Even more interesting, I guess, or equally as interesting, was the murder of Samuel Pettyjohn, a Chattanooga
Petty John.
businessman. So you have anything?
Nightclub owner. Nightclub owner.
Yeah, he was shot and
Yep.
killed. And he had been working with the FBI to get Blanton. And I guess they figured that he was a man who knew too much. And so the easiest thing to do was just get rid of him. But that was connected back to the Blanton administration. I can't say for sure that Blanton was actually the one that paid to have it done, or if he was clever enough that he had done it the way he had with everyone else and had insulation between he and the final act, just like his assistant took the fall for the commutations, just like his bodyguard, the highway patrolman, took the fall. But it didn't touch Blanton except reputation wise, I guess.
From what I understand, there's a possibility there was more than Pettyjohn.
Well, I think there were 5 mysterious deaths,
Right.
all about the same time. And just amazing. I mean, who would have thought that a governor would be getting away with all this?
Right.
But then,
Who would have thought a sheriff would have gotten by with?
well, let's go to the sheriff now, since you touched on that. Buford was a Republican. Ray Blanton was a Democrat.
Democrat.
And yet Blanton wanted Buford to campaign for him, and Buford did.
Right.
And allegedly there was an arrangement made where Buford would be named as the head of the Department of Public Safety, which would put him in control of both the Highway Patrol and the TBI back in those days.
Right.
And then you'd have Buford's hand in all the cookie jars, not just McNairy counties. He would have had access to everything that was going on in Tennessee. And if he could do as much as he did in McNairy County, I wonder what he would have done if he had had access to do things in the entire state.
There's no telling.
But
There's no telling.
that's I guess the thing that a lot of people don't understand was the relationship that existed between Blanton and Pusser. And it takes us back to Pauline's murder.
Right.
Because back then, if I'm not mistaken, well, I do know that Blanton had been in the Tennessee House of Representatives, and then he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives.
Right.
That's a lot of political power if you're trying to help a friend out.
Right.
And so when we were talking last week about a cover-up, about who could have handled that, who could have made it happen, I think that there's a good chance that Ray Blanton was involved.
Well, I know you know about the letter that you've seen from Ray to Will Terry about him coming to his office a couple of days after Pauline was killed, and some kind of big discussion that they had.
And who knows what that was?
That's right. And and Ray told him to be sure if he had anything else to talk about, to be sure and come back. He was welcome to come back to the office.
Huh. Well, you look how long it took the FBI to put all this together. I mean, Blanton died in what, 1997?
Right.
And it was what, 2018 or 2020, somewhere along in through there, when they finally connected him to Petty John's murder.
Right.
You've got Adamsville, which at the time was what, 1,000, 1,100 people, something.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that. Yeah.
And here they had both Buford Pusser and Ray Blanton, who since those days we've learned a great amount about. And to think that both of them have monuments for you to look at as you drive into town. You know, you got Buford's little billboard or whatever you want to call it. You've got Ray Blanton's monument as you drive into Adamsville. You got the Buford silhouette up on the water tower. And I guess there's references to him all over town. And makes you wonder if it comes out the way that I think it will with the TBI's research and investigation, what they're going to do with all that. You know, this is one of those things where it looks like that as the TB concludes everything, you have to wonder if they're going to also connect Ray Blanton to a lot of this.
Well, he's definitely connected. I mean, I pretty well, everybody always thought that.
If you want to learn the real story of Buford Pusser, you need to get my book, Buford Pusser, The Other Story. It is full of facts and information that you don't get anywhere else that I know of. It's the story as told by the people who live their own parts in the real tale. It's full of photographs, documents, lots of interesting things to see, and it pretty well outlines everything from Buford's birth up until the time of his death, and even after that, because the family became embroiled in a lot of lawsuits over his legacy. So again, Buford Pusser, The Other Story. It's available at both Amazon.com and eBay.
Well, you know, I'd like to put something else to rest while we're talking about this. You know, you've got a lot of people over there that will tell you that, well, you don't know how it was. You weren't here if you didn't live it. And, you know, I look at the age of these individuals and saying, well, gee, you may not have been alive, or you were just a kid when Buford was sheriff. So how would you know? I mean, I look at it that in my past, in law enforcement, you know, you would always check out a crime, look for evidence. And that's all I've been doing with all this, is just looking for anything to answer some of these questions, because I think it's a shame the way that Pauline died. And nobody's ever suffered the consequences for her death. And when you look at it, Buford Pusser seems to be the prime suspect in all of this. And, you know, I just think it's kind of a shame that a lot of people will not open their eyes and look at the evidence that's out there. You know, you ask them, well, why don't you present something on your side to show that I'm wrong? And they never do that. Yeah.
You know, something, you know, there's been books wrote about it that, you know, or you would think that you would want something to want it to be correct.
Well, as we know from the Pusser story, correctness doesn't mean a whole lot.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, nothing seems to matter. Just tell what you want to tell. You know, it's like some of them authors that wrote their little books and wrote in first person, like they were sitting there listening to everything. You know,
Yeah, I understand. I've
unbelievable.
commented on that many times myself.
Well,
And you're absolutely right. I mean, they make all the, and then when somebody tries to pin them down, like Bill Wade did with one author, he said, he asked him basically, how is it that you knew what they were saying in that ambush vehicle? Well, if I don't know, I just, you know, write what I think they would have been talking about. He didn't even know who the ambush party was. How could he even surmise what they might be, uh, their discussion might be? But that's the way the legend goes. I mean, that's the way that it gets started. And that's the reason why there's so much nonsense out there about it, is because a lot of people don't do any real research. There's a lot of this that most people don't know. And we're going to have to be wrapping this up. I'm looking at the clock and we're about to run out of time here. But it also makes you wonder how much protection that Buford might have gotten when he killed your aunt. And
right.
I've uncovered a lot of stuff that talks about Towhead White and Buford being in the area, uh, right across the street, as a matter of fact, the night that Towhead was killed. And it appears that Buford wanted to make sure the job got done. And so he was sitting
Well,
there watching, allegedly.
well, I mean, it obviously everything you see about Blanton talks about selling liquor license and everything.
Yeah.
Louise had threatened Buford a couple of days before and told him that she would talk to somebody in Nashville about what he was doing when he was upping how much she was having to pay.
Yeah.
And the sales had fell off to nothing because hell, beer was legal everywhere then in McNairy County. And one just, they make big
Prohibition had
money.
taken care of everything. The end
Right.
of Prohibition. Dennis, I hate to cut you short, but
Okay. We got to go.
we're going to have to call it quits here, or else the camera's going to cut us off.
Yeah.
So, at any rate, uh, we'll catch you next time. I appreciate you being here.
Okay. I appreciate you, Mike.
All right. Catch you later. So there you have it, folks. Ray Blanton, governor of Tennessee. Was he one that provided a lot of cover for Buford? We may never know the real answer, but there's a lot of circumstantial evidence there. And I think that goes a long way. At any rate, just remember, until next time, truth has no agenda.